Convert to Raid is giving away festive loot boxes in our Winter Veil celebration all through the month of December. And we've got a couple of different ways for you to cash in. Make sure to listen to the show and also follow us on Twitter for your chances to win awesome loot like t-shirts, plushies, books, gear, digital codes, coloring books, and so much more. And everyone that enters will be automatically submitted for our grand prize, a $300 shopping spree at jinx.com. So listen, follow, and win with CTR, and I hope you are having the happiest of winter veils. Welcome home, Raiders. Now, Kobolds and Catacombs has landed in Hearthstone, and the expansion is huge. Actually, it's so large that we decided to do a little something different. So, Convert to Raid presents this special report. Yes. I like the special reports. I really do. And joining me today for this very special report all about Kobolds and Catacombs is none other than Jocelyn Moffett from The Angry Chicken. So you're kind of an expert on this whole thing.
Well, thank you for that.
You're an aficionado / expert. So welcome.
I like that, aficionado.
Yeah.
That's a good title.
Yeah.
I should get business cards with that on it.
You should, absolutely. Well, welcome to the show, and thanks for dropping by. I really do appreciate it because we are very early on in this Kobolds and Catacombs expansion for Hearthstone. Tell us a little bit about it and kind of what we can expect with this new X pack.
Well, Kobolds and Catacombs is the last expansion in Hearthstone's Year of the Mammoth, which means that there are now 3 expansions from this year, from 2017. Mm-hmm. So with Kobolds and Catacombs, at least in my opinion, I found that they kind of used this expansion to have a bit of a looser theme than the previous expansions and tie up some loose ends, fill in some gaps in some decks, and, kind of like give us all the cards that finish off a lot of different archetypes for a lot of the classes. So every class has a legendary weapon. That's kind of this expansion's like hook. Mm-hmm. The whole theme is very dungeon crawly. Think like Dungeons and Dragons and adventuring parties with treasure. And it's a little bit of a, like I said, a looser theme, given, we live in the World of Warcraft, which is all about, dungeons and everything else.
Sure.
So, this theme is a little bit looser than, say, something like, even just our previous Frozen Throne expansion, which was all around like the Lich King and everyone became Death Knights. And, that was very focused. This is a little bit more vague, I guess. Well, a little bit of a looser theme.
So let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing in some of these cards, some of the new cards for this expansion. Some of the things that I noticed when I was opening up my all my card packs were a lot of dragon cards, some really cool hunter and shaman cards, and maybe some druid and a little bit of warlock to a lesser extent.
Well, it turns out all the classes actually got cards. I don't know if you know that.
Sure, no, I know, but I mean, when I'm noticing like the cool cards that that catch my eye, I'm like going, okay, I see a lot of hunter and shaman possibilities for sure. What kind of decks are we seeing off of this, at least in early play?
Well, I mean, we are literally 24 hours into the season, and right. So it's really, really hard to even say what we've been seeing because everyone is experimenting across the board. And I'm sure, especially after Trinity series, the finals are actually today.
Okay.
And they are playing with the new expansion.
Oh, wow.
So I think that after Trinity series is finished, then everyone is going to have kind of like, they're going to play with those decks. Let's be honest. When big tournaments happen, then the ladder is definitely influenced. Well, I think we'll see what those pros are bringing, but just on the ladder right now, Hunter's very popular, Mage is very popular, Warrior is very popular, and a lot of people are surprised that Hunter's popular because Hunter has an entirely new archetype that they've never had before, supported by very, very few cards. I believe there's only 2 cards in this set that actually have this card text. But the new hunter card text is if your deck has no minions, do a thing.
Okay.
And hunters have always have minions, right? Like
Right.
beasts, and like that's what hunters do. So it's basically like they took Marksman Hunter and put it into Hearthstone.
Wow, that's pretty neat. I like that.
Yeah, it's totally different. It's completely new for hunters. So there was kind of a spell-based hunter a couple of years ago. You guys might remember the card Lock and Load.
Oh,
but
yeah.
even that, like you still had some beasts. Like you still had some, because it's not even no beasts. It's no minions at all. So if your
Wow.
deck has no minions, is all spells, then you get to do something super powerful. So it's a new look for Hunter, and I think people are really excited about that.
Well, there are lots of things that you can do with hunters. I mean, because even like the random minion, is it a 3 or a 4 cost card that's a spell?
The Animal Companion?
Yeah. So
yes,
I mean,
yeah.
You've got stuff like that where you can still have an animal, but it's just it's in a different form, I guess.
It's the spell that creates the minion, which is fine,
right,
as long as the cards in your deck are spells and not minions.
Yep.
But I mean, it's like no Savannah High main. There's tons of people. It's been in the game since the very beginning, and a lot of people have said it's so powerful it should be a legendary card. Like hunters can't play with Savannah High mains. That was an auto include in like every hunter deck except for like the very, very aggressive kill you by turn 3 hunter decks from 2 or 3 years ago.
Right. We also have a new mechanic with recruit, right?
Well,
it's kind of new, newish.
You have a new keyword. Yes,
yeah.
They basically took something that was already happening in the game, gave it a keyword, and gave it a whole bunch of cards. I'm not 100% sure how many recruit cards are actually in this expansion, but every class can recruit. There's neutral recruits. There's all kinds of stuff. So yeah, we did get a new keyword for sure.
There are like secrets with recruit, and there are weapons with recruit, and I mean it's kind of all over the place. So
yeah.
So is there anything off of the new cards that you've seen that you're really interested in as far as what you have you been building decks in a particular way because of these cards?
Well, the only decks that I've really been building are to try to take advantage of things I thought were going to be powerful. And then the one thing I have noticed about this set in general is it seems like I feel like I have a plan to do some really powerful broken things. And then I get into a game and the person I'm playing against is doing more powerful, more broken things. And I'm like, what is even happening in Hearthstone right now?
Right. It's totally broken.
But, that's fun. Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of stuff because of this recruit keyword.
Mm-hmm.
It requires a almost like another level of deck building because you're pulling things out of your deck. So you have to have an understanding of what cards you're going to pull, which seems obvious. But then after that, you have to know, what's going to remain in your deck and what your strategy is going to be with the cards that you're pulling. Like the idea of thinning your deck is very powerful in card games. So you have to know that once your deck is thinned, what's left, what's my plan.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's almost like another level of deck building, which is really interesting and something people have been asking for in Hearthstone for a while. Like a lot of the more competitive players, a lot of the pro players don't want the feeling of like cookie cutter decks. Like they don't want to like type in Murloc, put in all the Murlocs and be like, now my deck is powerful. Like they want to have to really think about it. So I think Recruit does that. And there's a few, I can't remember what his name is specifically, but there's a legendary minion that pulls a 1 attack, 2 attack, and 3 attack minion from your deck.
Right.
And it's just disgusting. It's so powerful. And like we knew it would probably be good, but seeing it in action, it's just like, oh my God.
Right.
Like what is even happening right now? Like I don't want to play against this.
Yeah. Well, and then you also you have to think about what those minions do actually, and make sure that they don't have battle cries because that'll be useless, right? And
well, exactly. But with Kobolds and Catacombs, we actually saw an uptick in the amount of cards that have the at the end of your turn card text.
Okay.
So they moved, like there are still battle cry and death rattle cards, but I feel like they swung a little bit towards these end of turn effects because when you recruit things, you don't get the battle cry. So they wanted people to have options when deck building of cards to actually put in that are going to do something as opposed to just, coming out and being vanilla stats. because a lot of Hearthstone for so long has been built around, powerful effects, but weaker, attack or weaker body because, you can't have powerful everything.
Right.
There's always got to be some sort of a cost and a balance there. So because that's the way Hearthstone's been designed, if you pull those minions out of your deck, they're useless. Like, you don't want them. You want the battle cries. So now these end of turn effects are kind of fixing that potential problem with recruiting.
Gotcha. Let's see. Anything else? We talked about weapons a little bit, but is there any more detail? I mean, because I saw like the weapon for mage was 0/3 weapon. I mean, so it's not really a weapon. But at the end of your turn, you get to draw a card, or you get to draw 3 cards.
Cards, yes.
Which is amazing, especially in the early game if you can get that out there. But at the same time, you might be stacking your hand a little bit too full. So
right, and so this was kind of like the big thing in this expansion. Before, the only weapons available to, say, a class like Warlock would be something off of another card. So, for instance, Jaraxxus, when you turn into Jaraxxus, he gets a weapon. When you play Medivh, then you get a weapon. But Warlock itself didn't have like a class weapon. Same thing for Priest, same thing with Mage. So what they did in this expansion is they said, okay, everybody gets weapons, and what do those weapons look like? And so I think it's wise that they gave them 0 attack in some of those cases. I like the idea of, a caster standing back and like doing something from afar with like a staff. That makes sense to me.
Yep.
And if the cast, like if a mage was running at me with their face, like that wouldn't make any sense to me. You kind of lose the class flavor. Yep. So I think they did a really good job with the implementation of the weapons, and some of them have very powerful effects, like you mentioned, the mage weapon. The fact that they have 0 attack means that they never lose durability. So they're basically persistent effects until you're able to destroy the weapon. So you have to be kind of careful, though, because like you mentioned, at the end of your turn, drawing 3 cards, super, super powerful. But you do that 3 or 4 like times in a row, and also like you're burning your cards because you just can't spend them as fast as you're drawing them. So it's nice that they're, again, powerful with a drawback. I think is really, really great. So they've made some interesting changes to weapons.
They're wonderful stat sticks, just like in WoW. So it's really great. I like it. Let's talk about the other new thing, which is the dungeon run. Okay. Yes. And so this is the new PvE thing, and it kind of it feels a lot like Arena without the PvP mode. So this I've played a bunch. I'm not gonna lie. I was playing like way too much and getting maybe a little tilted. Especially on some of the classes, warrior. But let's talk about this a little bit. Just give a rundown of the dungeon mode for everybody.
Okay, so when you go into dungeon mode, there are now 48 bosses. This is the new single player content. So this is instead of what would be traditionally an adventure. So we had an adventure in Frozen Throne, and it was very much like you progress through wings. It felt like it was ripped right from the Ice Crown raid. It was very much, step by step. There was a reward at the end of each wing, which I believe were all card packs. So, you beat 3 bosses, you got a card pack. And then once you beat the adventure, then you're done. And then there was a card back for defeating the adventure, or defeating the Lich King specifically, with all 9 classes. So that's the way adventures are done in the past. And they took a different look at single player content going forward in this expansion, and they gave us Dungeon Run. So from the pool of 48 bosses, you have to defeat 8 of them with a given class. And so you start off with a small deck and then build your deck as you go. So after you defeat a boss, you'll be offered 3 choices of 3 cards, so 9 cards total, and they're in like groupings. And you have to decide how you want to build your deck going forward without knowing what the bosses are that you're going to be facing. So you get a randomly shuffled boss deck with some stipulations, though, because basically, like, King Togwaggle, for example, is one of the end bosses. You can't get him first. So, and they have some variations in there. So, like, you might have a boss that is rated from, say, 3rd to 5th. And when you get him as your 3rd boss, then, he might have an ability that does 2 damage. And if you get him as the 5th boss, he has an ability that does 5 damage instead. So they kind of have this like scaling thing depending on when you encounter them in your dungeon run. So So then you build your deck as you go. You get new cards after you defeat each boss. The bosses get progressively harder. And there are also treasures available to you in the dungeon, which I believe are after every other boss that you defeat.
That seems right.
They are either powerful cards to go in your deck or powerful persistent effects. And then you go through, try to beat the bosses. It gets exceedingly difficult. The final boss is very hard in general. And there is a lot of luck involved as to, what cards you're offered, what treasures you're offered, what persistent effects you're offered, and what bosses you draw as you progress through your run. But that also means that it is almost infinitely replayable, which is awesome and something that outside of like competitive ladder we haven't really had in Hearthstone before.
Right. So now a question for you. Like, I've noticed that there are certain things that will happen if you're playing one type of character versus another. Like if you play mage, say, like I did a couple of different times, I got the guy that every time you cast a spell created a minion.
Okay. Yep.
That one sucked eggs because I was building up this wonderful spell deck for a mage, and then this guy comes along and it's like, oh no, I'm done. I'm toast. This is not good. Are there certain strategies that we're seeing? I know that it's super early in this thing, but do you have any helpful tips for people that are getting going in this right now? Would you say you want to buy into a certain because all these different cards that they offer you, the 3 different sets of cards will have a name on it, right? So if you're playing a shaman, it might be elemental or farseer or something along those lines. Do you think that people should buy into one type of deck, or should it be more of a balanced approach, or what do you think?
I tend towards a more balanced approach because no boss encounter is going to be the same. So synergies are always good and important. And if you see, like, say you're playing a warrior and you pick a berserker set, so you have 3 minions that when they're damaged, they get more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then in the next offering of cards, I might look for like a whirlwind effect, but I probably maybe don't want any more minions that, get stronger when they get damaged. I might want, some survivability, some ways to gain armor, some taunt minions, just because you never know what's going to be around the corner of your next dungeon. And you don't necessarily want to be super minion heavy if the boss that you're going to face is, clears the board every turn or something crazy like that. So I feel like diversifying is probably better if you're looking for, going long in the dungeon.
Yeah.
But some of the synergies are super fun, right? So, sure. I mean, it kind of depends what you're in there for, because the thing about Dungeon Run is there is basically no reward.
Right.
Which is kind of like the one, I mean, it's the complaint that I've had since the very beginning. When it was announced, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to play so much of this. It's going to be great. And then they don't give you gold, they don't give you dust, they don't give you cards, they don't give you anything. And that was a little bit disappointing. And it seems like that's been the feeling of people who I've talked to who have actually completed dungeon runs and beaten the final boss. Like, you beat the final boss and then they're just like, some little kobold pops up and says something about a candle and then you're done. Right. Like, there's no like, bye-bye, you win 100 gold or here's like, a pack.
Or like a card back. Just like a card back. That would be great.
Treasure.
Yeah.
Imagine you got a treasure for defeating a dungeon.
That would be awesome.
So that'd be awesome. It's a little bit counterintuitive, I think, with the theme of the expansion to then not give rewards. They did put like daily quests. So, when you log into Hearthstone and it pops up and it says, like defeat, 40 minions. Those quests now, there are ones for dungeon runs. So it's like defeat 5 or 10 bosses and it will give you a reward. But they're random. They're in the pool of everything that you have to do in Hearthstone. So unless you get one of those quests, there's no rewards. I say that there is a card back. If you defeat all 8 bosses with all 9 classes, then
Boof.
You'll get, then you'll get a card. Then you get your card back. So there is a card back, but it's behind a very, very big wall.
Yeah, I don't dig that. I think let's put.
Let me see if I can sweeten the pot for you.
Okay.
So if you want to try to defeat all 9 bosses in as few attempts as possible, and you have a Twitch account, you can stream it on Twitch under the Dungeon Run community and possibly win a part of $30,000.
Right.
So there is that.
Yeah. Good luck, everybody. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, Twitch is partnered with Blizzard right now. They're running essentially a 10-day long contest where if you stream your Dungeon Run attempts under the Dungeon Run community, not game. So Hearthstone is your game, Dungeon Run is your community. And if you stream your entire start to finish, like you cannot have any offline attempts, which, yeah. So, but you can like practice. So what I plan to do is practice on EU and then stream my American attempts. And then the top 10 players with the lowest number of attempts, which will be verified by Blizzard. So, no offline cheating, guys. Mm-hmm. You can't just like stream your 9 successful dungeon runs. But then again, you're not going to know which ones are going to be successful from the start anyways.
Right.
But so you have to stream every single one of your attempts and each server counts as a different like entry. So you could potentially enter 3 times. And then so the top 10 will then go into like a sudden death dungeon run where you pick one class and you have to have the least amount of attempts with that one class. And then the top 3 players get a share of $30,000. So that's another big wall, but there is a reward if you want to try it. If you're a streamer and you want to try it, that is a thing that's happening right now.
It's hour 274. I have been here for days and I have a bottle of my own urine. No, I'm not going to go there. But yes, that sounds impossible. So good luck to everybody out there. And I hope it goes well for folks. I don't know. What else do we have for this expansion? The Dungeon Run is actually really cool. And for those guys that haven't been into Hearthstone for a bit, this is a good way back in, I think.
100%. Because it doesn't have anything to do with your collection, right?
Right. So it's just they offer you cards and you just go and you just build decks and it's totally free and it's totally there for everybody.
It's not cost either. It's not like Arena where it's 150 gold or $2. It's literally there's no cost to go into Dungeon Run. It's not tied to your collection. So if you haven't played Hearthstone in 5 years, it doesn't matter. You have exactly the same amount of chance at awesome cards as I do, and I've played every day for 5 years. So.
Yep. Well, and actually, my wife just started playing Hearthstone. She just went through the tutorial like a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, honey, there's a new mode in Hearthstone that you have to try, and she's like, I'm busy holiday shopping, and so it's like, she's like, but once she gets settled in, I'm gonna say, hey, you should try this out. It starts out pretty easy and then gets progressively tougher, and see how she responds to it, and I'll let you know.
Good. I'm curious because I mean that is the part of the Hearthstone experience that I don't get to have anymore, right? That totally new player, no idea what's going on, like not all up on the Reddit and everything else. Like I don't get the new player experience or the casual player experience anymore. So I'm always curious to know like what people outside of the kind of more hardcore competitive scene are doing and thinking about the game.
Right. Well, and speaking of knowing too much about the game, you actually told me about some tie-ins that Hearthstone has to WoW for this expansion, right?
Yeah, I'm really excited. This was data mined a couple days before the patch actually hit, and I think it has some really interesting potential like impacts on World of Warcraft. So the card back Azeroth is Burning, which is amazing. It looks so cool. I can't wait to get it. But the card back was actually data mined. And it's now in the game tied to, again, another data mined quest, which is a special promotion. And it's basically for, I think, purchasing the collector's edition of Battle for Azeroth. And you're saying, yeah, Joss, that happens all the time. Yeah, whatever, that's great. But we know when the next Hearthstone expansion is coming. Mm-hmm. It's going to be in the spring because that's when our rotation happens. That's when we're going to get our new standard year alongside our next expansion. And it's kind of like in the March, April-ish range.
Okay.
So why put the Battle for Azeroth card back in the Kobolds and Catacombs expansion unless the pre-order for Battle for Azeroth was happening before the next Hearthstone expansion?
We
could be looking at a spring Battle for Azeroth.
I don't think that's the case, but we should definitely be in beta for that, which would be really great. And so people will probably be playing it, not necessarily that it's going to be live yet, right? So
you don't think so? Why would they put this in the, like, this is you can actually go into your collection and see the card backs now.
Sure.
It's in Hearthstone.
Right.
Which we've never had something patched into Hearthstone that then has been like unavailable for an extended period of time.
Well, I think hype for pre-order. Hype for pre-order is definitely a thing.
But when was the last time that they really did that? Like a super long pre-order? I feel like was it, and you'll have to excuse me because
Sure.
I came to WoW very, very late, but wasn't it like Cataclysm that had a really long pre-order because you also got like Diablo or something?
Yeah, I can't remember about the different releases for the games as far as when they were available for pre-purchase. I don't have that at the tip of my fingers here. But they haven't announced a beta. They haven't even announced an alpha release yet.
But they are so far along. We saw so much more at BlizzCon than anyone was expecting.
That's true.
So I mean, what if they're just like, you know what? We're really happy with our systems. We're at a good pace for content delivery. Our team's really big. We're going to do a 2-week beta as long as nobody breaks anything. Let's go.
Oh, they would never do that. They would never do that. Come on. Blizz has always been one of those. They've always been one of those companies that is like, nope, we're not going to release it until it's just right. I don't think they're going to stop now.
What if it's ready, dude? What if it's ready? I think you're discounting the fact that I totally agree. They are polished. They put out stuff in alpha that most companies don't put out at launch.
Right.
Like they are super polished as a company. Obviously love all the stuff that they do.
Right.
I'm not saying they're going to rush anything out. I'm saying they have sped it up and they have been on point with their content. 7.2 Broken Shore crap aside, they have been on point with their content. What if their team is just ready?
Right. And I think that the rumors that I hear are that, it is further along than most people expect, I think. But I do think that they're still going to go through the process. And I agree with you. The systems that they have in place from Legion are really, really good. And I think that all the classes are in a fairly good spot, and if not, that they can probably switch that on the fly pretty easily, which is a great thing. But yeah, I think I can't say that it's going to be spring release. Maybe they're going to push for it, but I don't know.
At least spring pre-order, but I think it's going to come sooner than we think. I don't even think we're going to have to wait till August. I think it's going to be like
I would hope that it's
June, maybe.
Yeah, I would hope that it's after April at some point. I mean, like that's I'm not going to predict it, but I want it for May. That would be awesome. But it'll probably be like maybe a summer release. We'll see.
But yeah, I think this is pointing to sooner than we might have originally been thinking.
All right.
So, thanks for the tease, Hearthstone.
Yeah, thanks, Hearthstone. Anything else Hearthstone related that you wanted to talk about?
I think that's pretty much it. I mean, we're still so early on. Like I mentioned, Trinity series is happening right now. So if you're interested in seeing what the pros are doing with Kobolds and Catacombs, that's the place to go. If you're not familiar with Trinity series, they're teams of 3 players, and you actually get to listen in to the pros while they're playing their decks and while they're making their decisions. So if you're interested in seeing what's going on in Kobolds and Catacombs and getting like the super inside scoop, that's the place to go.
All righty, sounds good. Well, Joss, where can people find you? If they want
you can find me on Twitter and Twitch at JossPlays.
All right. And of course, make sure to check out The Angry Chicken, because I'm sure that you guys are going to be talking about Kobolds and Catacombs for a while, right?
Yeah, just a little bit.
Well, thank you, Jocelyn, for coming on, and we will see you soon, I'm sure. And for everybody out there, thank you so much for dropping by, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.